Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. Before we get started on our topic today, entering and paying expenses, a few technical things. If you've got to click the little red arrow to the side of your webinar control panel to minimize the webinar control panel, or drag it off to your second desktop, simply to get it out of the way from the main screen of the presentation, just so you kind of get the full picture of everything here. As always, we are recording today's webinar event. The video of the event will be on our website here sometime in the next probably 24 to 48 hours, if not sooner, maybe even later today. So you can revisit this topic. The event is taken from our A103 Accounting Training Workbook, pages 16 to 27. So that's what I'm using as the basis, printed basis for the webinar event today. Unlike other documents where they are on our website, these would be in the training workbooks, which are available for purchase from the workbook page on our website. Excuse me. You can always purchase those online and print those. They're, I think, $12 each, I think. So please visit that training workbooks page of our website if you'd like to purchase those. We try to use them as much as we can for the basis of our webinars. Kind of gives a better kind of through line and a better understanding of the software and how it works when we can kind of keep the printed material in keeping with the videos and the webinars. Okay. We'll be here till 12:20. I will wrap up wherever I am, and if you have questions, please type those into the questions panel of the control panel, webinar control panel. I'll do my best to keep an eye on those and repeat those for everyone's benefit, and we'll see what we can do to get those answered. Please, folks, keep the questions on topic about our entering and paying bills topic. There's probably another event scheduled, or if through support we can answer your other questions if you have other questions about other parts of the software. Not that I don't want to answer it, I just may not be equipped to answer it for you right now. Okay. All right, so on page 16 of our workbook, we're working in accounting. Basically, in essence, page 16 talks about accounting and paying bills entirely. So basically, it's a two-step process. We enter bills. Let me get out my highlighter. So we enter bills right here as step one, okay? And then we do pay bills, which is step two. Two different transactions, okay? So, sorry, the other way around. My fault. Step one, then step two. My fault. I got those backwards. So, enter bills first, step one. Pay bills, step two. Okay, we're here really primarily to talk about the step one and entering bills today. Okay, you can enter the bills today and pay them today. You can enter bills today and then pay them on a later time, later date, tomorrow, next week, whenever you want to pay them. Okay. Basically, bills, you can pay bills to any vendor that's listed here on our chart of accounts under accounts payable, right here under accounts payable, or any of them that are classified or categorized as a separate liability that are assigned to a number two. Okay, any of them that are listed here under liabilities, we can choose at enter bills and subsequently pay bills. Okay, that's what it says when we look at the chart of accounts. We see our accounts payable here. When we click on that, we got accounts payable. Here are all of our vendors. When we collapse that down, we can enter bills to those folks, or we can enter bills to any one of these separate 200 accounts. Okay? Accounts payable is simply a ledger that shows up on our chart of accounts with sub-accounts. Okay? Or in the case of our pass-throughs, those are separate liabilities with ledgers, or any of the single 200 accounts. They all can be chosen under enter and pay bills. Okay? So when we're ready to enter a bill, or pay a bill as the case may be, we're going to go to enter bills. We're then going to enter the date of the transaction. We'll leave it as today's date. We would enter, if you have an invoice number, we would recommend it just for record keeping purposes, but there's no requirement in the software to enter an invoice number at all. If you have a due date, we would recommend probably entering it. But again, it's not required by the software. The due date is really particularly helpful when you go up to, say, reports, worksheets, and you do the accounts payable. And we're looking at here, not going to look at this report, but it's the show payments due by. If I don't have a due date entered, that show payments by due by report is ineffective for us. But if you use that report, you've got a lot of bills that you pay in a month or a particular by a certain due date. Entering that due date and running that report may prove helpful for you, but it's not required in church windows. Okay? When we choose the select vendor payee, we click the down arrow. Notice we've got all of our vendors here, including intermixed with our other vendors. These are our accounts, liabilities, and vendors listed alphabetically. So if I click on the account number tab, notice now it's putting all of my separate 200 liabilities at the bottom, but all of my other vendors listed alphabetically above it. You know, so I can type in here Michelle's Crafts. I meant to type in there Michelle's, and there's our liability for Michelle's Crafts, or our vendor Michelle Russell. So they both are categorized as liabilities. I can choose either one. Okay? So if I choose Michelle's Crafts, I can here to the right enter any transaction comments that are basically pertain to either any of the accounts involved in the entry. So if I wanted these transaction comments to be available to show on reports, whether I run it for Michelle's Crafts, the vendor, or the expense accounts that I choose, I would enter those. If I now come down to my expense account and I click my down arrow, here are all of my expense accounts. I can type either a number or a name, either one. Okay. So if I choose, okay, senior citizens, you know, we're having having a craft event for our senior citizens at the church. I'm going to be charging that senior citizens expense. I can type in the actual amount. That's a single line. This is what we would categorize as a single line bill. So we'll do this senior craft event. If I could type today, these transactions will only be available to show when I run the expense account for senior citizens. Okay? If I put them up here under transaction comments, they could also show when I run the report for Michelle's Crafts, the vendor. That's a single line bill. Okay? An example of a multi-line bill might be something here like maybe a credit card bill, or maybe let's do a different one. We'll do Christian Bible supplies here. There's my vendor. We come down here. We choose, let's see, what are we choosing here? Sorry, folks. We're going to choose our bulletins. And then we're going to choose, enter the amount for that. Then notice we tab over, the account moves down. Now we're going to choose office supplies, or maybe worship expenses. Let's try that instead. There we go, worship supplies. And we'll do an amount for that. And I can go over here to the right and enter any specific transaction comments if I wish. Okay. I can continue to add expenses to this if I wish. Okay. So notice now when I continue to the total here in the middle, let me get out my highlighter, is a total of all of my expenses listed above, okay, as part of that. So there now is my total of all three of my expense transactions. The only reason why I would really need to post these and click Done Add to Batch in between each one of these bills is if I wanted my charge for, say, bulletins to be on a different date on my reports than, say, my worship supplies or my office expenses. if they can all share the same date, in this case August 8th, I can leave them all here and charge them all to separate line items and post them as one single transaction, essentially. Oh, well, and if I want them as one check. Okay. That would be the other reason why I might want to post them separately or have them click Done, Add to Batch in between each of them, is if I want to print separate checks or I want them to show with separate on separate dates. Okay. But again, same transaction comments and same line item comments work very much the same way. Okay. So then I would similarly click Done, Add to Batch, and it adds my bill to my batch at the bottom. Okay. Again, this would be a multi-line bill. Oops, I made a mistake. I meant to add something else for my library supplies. I go back up, I double click on it at the bottom, it moves it back up. Or if I highlight it and click Edit down here in the bottom left, right down here, Edit, okay? That will then allow me to go back up and add it back up to the top to make further changes to that. Okay? Or if I go, okay, I'm meant to add some library expenses. Again, I can now click on Add to Batch with my new total. If I say am entering a bill that I don't want to pay at all, I go, oh, I didn't mean to add my, Michelle's Crafts here. You highlight that and click Remove, and it'll pop up and say, are you sure you wish to completely remove this, delete from the unposted batch? I'm going to go, oops, no, I do want to pay that. I would click No, and it would leave it. So right here, I like to point out, right here, down here, next to my unposted batch, there's a little number there. That is the number of transactions that I have in my batch of bills. Okay? I strongly recommend if you're doing a lot of bills simultaneously, I deal with it on my support calls fairly frequently, is, I was in the middle of entering a 30-line bills batch, and all of a sudden Church Windows gave me an error and it closed. Where's my batch? Well, folks, if you don't click the button down here at the bottom labeled Save Batch periodically, right down here, Save Batch, if I don't click on that, if I do, it pops up and says your batch was saved successfully. Okay? Now, I could safely close all the way out of Church Windows, all the way out of accounting, and come back in. Let's assume I did, but if I go back into Enter Bills, notice it brings me up right back at my last save point. Okay? So be sure to click that Save Batch button periodically to save your work. You're not required to, but I've talked to a lot of folks on support calls where they've been terribly frustrated because it doesn't save itself. You need to save it. Okay? It'll save frustration when you least expect it. If, say, I want to add a vendor during the bill entry process, I can do that by clicking the little plus sign right here. Right here, there's a plus sign. See that? That's an Add Vendor button. So if my vendor's not in my list, okay, so if I type in, linens, let me capitalize that, linens and things, and I click Tab, it says, hey, this vendor is not in my chart of accounts. It's not found. You want to add it? If I say Cancel, I can also click the plus sign and it opens up a very similar window. So if I type in linens, I think that's an things, and I click OK, it'll add it, or if I click the More button, it'll reveal a location where I can enter more vendor information, address information, email, phone numbers, what have you, okay? If I simply click OK, it now adds that, and now I can type in my, type in whatever expense account and go ahead and continue to add to the, add to my batch or add my bill. Don't have that in there. We're not going to worry about that, folks. But that's how easy it is to add a vendor. I don't need to close out of Enter Bills to add the vendor. I can literally start typing it. If it's not in my chart of accounts, we saw that it'll pop up and say, hey, this vendor wasn't found. Would you like to add it? You can go ahead and add it that way too. Okay? If, say, I have receive a credit from a vendor, something that I don't receive a check for, So let's say right here, I've got a bill where I've got a credit from a vendor, not something that I can physically deposit at the bank. It's merchandise credit. I basically owe the vendor less money. I can simply choose the bill. Well, that bad one here for mid-industrial supplies. If, say, Christian Start Bible and Supplies has given us a credit for something, let's say they've given us a credit for the $34.56 for the return of a library item. I can enter the expense and the item and then simply put a check mark in the credit memo box right here to the right, and notice how it adjusts my amount of my bill automatically. So it's now reduced that bill by the $34.56. I can enter it as a separate bill, but again, this works because I've not received something I can physically deposit. It's an adjustment crediting back the expense and a reduction to the vendor balance. Okay? If you did receive a check to deposit, we would not do this. This is shown on page 22 of our workbook on posting credit memos. Okay? Basically, these are self-adjusting if I enter them automatically here. Basically, the amount that I would write to the Christian Bible Supplies is $780.23, not $783.23 plus the $34.56. Okay? So I'd go ahead and add that to my batch. Okay? So once we've got our bills batch entered, I would either do post or post and pay these bills, depending on if I was ready to post them now, or I was wanting to, or pay them now, or I want to pay them later. Okay? So one of the things that I wanted to show here was we're just going to do post for the time being, folks. So it's asking me, do I want to print a report of the bills that I've just posted? I'm going to click no on that. So I close. Now it's cleared out my batch, notice. And now when I go back into pay bills, if we click on quick pay and view outstanding bills, here are all of our bills that we've posted. Okay? These are all the ones that I can now, they're sitting here waiting to pay. I can pay them now. I can pay them later. Okay? One of the things I wanted to show here was when we run, say, the general ledger for our Christian Bible Supplies. So if we go into Manage Accounts, go to our chart of accounts, we find Christian Bible Supplies, we click Print. We're running it for the month of August, and we click Print. I want to show you how that credit memo shows on our report. Did I choose Christian Bible Supplies? I'm sorry, folks. Maybe I meant to choose one of the other ones. It was the Mid-City Industrial Supplies. Maybe that's where I posted that. I could have sworn I did that there. I'm sorry, folks. Well, it shows up as a negative amount here, as a minus, a bracketed figure on our bill. Okay, so it shows all of the other charges to those, then it shows as a positive value to all the rest of those. Okay. Maybe I did post it as that. Shoot, sorry. Let's go to transactions and browse and show that. Let's do bills entered today. Well, I guess I must have missed that because I thought the bill had a negative balance on it. I thought oh, there it is. So there's our credit. So it's a credit to the expense account. So it would be, I'm sorry, it would show up as that way against the, the library supplies on there. Well, in any case, it shows as a negative amount against that expense and against the vendor account. but that's the effect it has. We're reducing the amount we owe the vendor, not increasing it. So anyway, that's our topic today, folks.